Hi everyone. I've got a few slides, just three. The first one is about me, and I think it's important to sort of appreciate that there's no standard sort of route as a chartered engineer, or no standard, work environment, if you like, and that professional membership of the Nuclear Institute and professional registration isn't kind of, it doesn't only apply to a certain stereotype of person. So I I have varied experience across Sellafield and consultancy and in the supply chain in a range of professions across design, project management, construction management, decommissioning, spent fuels management, and various other sort of niche topics like cybersecurity and IT. Um, and I was initially progressing my sort of professional registration with the Institution of Civil Engineers, having studied structural engineering. And I've also considered over the past few years the going down the APM route as well. But now, in my role with the council, I lead a small specialist team, um, which involves applying my nuclear knowledge and expertise, if you like, engineering expertise, to economic strategy development and acting as the intelligent mind on behalf of the community when it comes to the impact of nuclear activities on our patch, which are mainly concerning Sellafield, but also with aspects of new build as well. And I hold another role with the Cumbria Local Enterprise Partnership, which is as part of a small development team working to bring new clean energy projects to the county. So that might include large, small, and advanced nuclear, plus other sort of associated developments around heat and fuels generation. And I kind of consider myself to have a second career in people and skills as the chair of the YGN and in my role on the board of the Nuclear Skills Strategy Group. So, as you know, I hope that sort of demonstrates that the fact that you're an engineer or a scientist or an environmental professional doesn't necessarily have to mean that a particular route is applicable to you, and likewise that if you're not necessarily one of those things in your day job by the typical sort of understanding of what those things means, that professional registration with the NI is still a viable route for you. So next slide, please, Andy. So the first slide I've got here is on membership, and then the second one is on the chartership process. But the advice about membership is equally applicable to the second half, given that you have to demonstrate that you've met the nuclear delta standard, whichever route you go down. So I was lucky enough to have had the chance on the nuclear graduates program to experiment with roles across the industry, and then I kind of continued that after the program by moving from Sellafield into the supply chain to gain some specialist experience, and that kind of process led me to the NI because I was a structural engineer by training, but my experience was pretty varied. But the thing that was running through all of it was the fact that I was a nuclear professional. So Andy will have already mentioned, in previous webinars and gone into more detail, but the nuclear delta is that standard for nuclear professionalism, and it's what sets the NI apart from other professional institutions. And that's around nuclear safety, nuclear security, and nuclear technology. So my 5 top tips on making that application. The first one is around not comparing yourself to others. I struggled for ages asking questions like, what do I need to show? What kind of evidence is expected? How do I know if it's good enough to meet the standard? And I think the point is, and the realization I came to, is that you're the best person, the best placed person to map your experience and knowledge against the standard. So that leads on to point 2, which is about valuing your own experience. The other bit that I really realized as I went through the process, and which helped me to actually get on with the application, was that you'll be judged on your own merits. So depending on your role, you will be able to demonstrate different knowledge and application of that knowledge in whatever it is you do. So a nuclear operator's application would look a lot different than an engineering consultant, which would look a lot different than a contract manager. But it's all okay as long as you are showing how you are implementing your knowledge of nuclear safety, nuclear security, and nuclear technology in your role. The third point I put there is about selling yourself. I think lots of people struggle in applications, not just for the NI, but generally, to actually big themselves up a bit. So, you know, this is about you, and it's about demonstrating your knowledge and your behavior. So don't be afraid to say I did this and I achieved that. Linked to that, and linking back to what Andy said before, presentation is important in my mind. You know, if you structure your application in a logical way and you make it easy for the reviewer to read it and to understand it, then that must give you an advantage. So I did things like I included a one-page cover statement, even though it wasn't part of the form, you know, but just summarizing how my experience and my learning to date related to the nuclear delta. And then 5, again, something Andy's already touched on, is about gathering CPD and taking credit for it. You know, demonstrating that you're interested in the bigger picture, whether that's, you know, at whatever scale, so whether that's at plant scale, organization scale, industry scale, or global community, whatever it is, by demonstrating that you're interested in the bigger picture beyond your role, you show that you're open to new ideas, and you understand that bigger picture enables innovation in the introduction of new technology, and likewise commitment to learning and development shows that you're willing to maintain an up-to-date knowledge that will sort of help you in terms of implementing best practice in nuclear safety and security. So I would say take every opportunity you can to gather CPD outside of your day job, and make sure that you take credit for that in your application. Andy, next slide, please. So then, moving on to Chartership, I submitted my membership and chartership applications separately. So I became a member in June 2019, and I was ratified as a chartered engineer in November 2019. But all of the advice for the membership application applies here. So then the other bits of advice that I would say sort of on top of that for the chartership form are, first of all, to take advice. So in the very early stages of my application, I had a conversation with Clive in his role as chair of the membership committee, and, you know, various conversations with Andy and others at the NI team, just to get a bit of guidance on how to fill out the form, you know, just all those kind of simple questions, if you like. And the fact that you've signed up for this webinar means that you're already doing that, so that's really good. The third point I think is really important, regardless of your application with the NI or not. You know, finding a mentor is so valuable, and you know that could be someone who ends up becoming your proposer or referee, or it could be a line manager, but it could be someone, and it might even be more valuable if it's someone, you know, independent of your day-to-day job, if you like. And it really helped me to run through my application and think about my experience and get a fresh pair of eyes on it, because, you know, someone else can give you that perspective and pick out things, so they can say, well, have you thought about, you know, demonstrating how that experience that you know you've got, actually you're thinking about it in one way, but you can actually show that it helps you in another area as well. So you actually get more value from your own experience, potentially, by having that fresh set of eyes on it. Point 4, I've said, just get on with it. So I found that once I started recording my evidence and trying to map it against the standards, then it immediately showed, you know, that one, in a positive way, one, I had loads of really good experience and I was quite proud, but two, it starts to show the gaps. So then you can, you know, by having just started putting pen to paper, you start to figure out, well, you know, I need to get additional experience in a certain area, or I need to do a bit of learning in another area. So actually the process of applying for professional registration can actually start to inform your CPD plans before you're even at the stage of having achieved your registration. And then the final point I've put is about the interview, or, you know, the professional review. So I guess the advice here is that by the time you've submitted your application and been invited to interview, you should have pretty high confidence that it's yours to lose at this stage. So I would suggest it's better to be over prepared by the time that you submit your application, so that it takes the pressure off the interview, rather than the other way around, which is that you submit an application you're not quite sure about and then try and sort of scramble it in the interview. So I actually found that the interview was a lot scarier ahead of the day itself, but on the day it turned out to be a really positive experience, and that was part of the whole kind of value of the process for me. And by the time that you apply, to sort of wrap it all up, by the time you submit your application, you'll probably have at least 4 or 5 years of professional experience. You'll have done a significant amount of learning, whether that's formal learning or CPD. You'll have spent months or years assessing that experience against the standards as you put the evidence together. And you'll have had numerous conversations with managers, referees, sponsors, mentors, friends and family, the NI, and others about your application. So you'll know when you're ready. And if you don't know that yet, that probably means something, but that shouldn't be a negative. It just means that you need to keep going, and you, by focusing on it, you will get there quicker than if you sort of waited around and kind of saw what happened. So they're my top tips. I'm happy to take any questions at the end.